It is possible for us to protect the jobs of youngsters if the senior people were to make some minor adjustments.
When the doyen of India's IT industry speaks, the nation listens, and that's exactly what happened when we got that exclusive interview for you this week with Infosys co-founder Narayana Murthy. Now, this is the first time he spoke out on the contentious issue of IT layoffs, which, remember, has rocked the industry in the last few weeks. Top names such as Infosys, Tech Mahindra, Wipro, Cognizant really facing the ire from aggrieved employees, affected employees also petitioning labor commissioners in various states, really making everyone question if this is just routine performance-related separation, or is there more to the way this is happening across the IT industry. We put these questions to Narayana Murthy, and he really took a different stance compared to what NASSCOM was saying, what the minister was saying. He said that it is possible to protect jobs as long as seniors make adjustments and more time is given to train juniors. This clearly resonated with many people. If you look at the massive traction that this interview got this week, it trended on Twitter. It was picked up by pretty much every major newspaper and channel in the country, because what he said seems to have struck a chord with many young employees, with many aspiring engineers. In fact, hear out a chunk of that interview we got with him.
We have gone through these drafts in business several times in the past. We went through that in 2008. We went through that in 2001 when there was internet bust. So this is nothing new. So therefore, there is no need for us to become extremely anxious. Number two, we have had solutions to such problems in the past. Let me give you example of Infosys itself. When the market became very tough, when the market shrank actually in 2001, at that time we had offered jobs to 1,500 engineers. Several companies were postponing the joining date. We said, let's not do that. Let us demonstrate our commitment to youngsters by the senior people taking some salary cuts and based on the disposable income, and reducing that kind of cut as we went down the job hierarchy, and then let's welcome these 1,500 engineers. That's exactly what we did. It is possible for us to protect the jobs of youngsters if the senior people were to make some minor adjustments. Number one. Number two, parallelly, the industry leaders will identify new areas of opportunity. They will mount training programs to train these youngsters in those new technologies and give them enough opportunity to pick up those technologies, and then tell them, friend, you have to work harder now and ensure that you are in a position to add value to the company in the next 1 year or so. Otherwise, we will not have any opportunity for you.
Do you see that happening today in some of the big Indian IT companies, say TCS, Infosys, Wipro, Tech Mahindra, wherever we've seen reports of layoffs? Is that commitment there among senior management that I will take a pay cut, but I'm not going to let the livelihood of middle managers or freshers who we are yet to induct get affected in any way, because we haven't been able to read the business environment accurately?
All that I can say is that there are a lot of smart leaders in the industry, and I have no doubt at all that they are all well-intentioned people and they can find solutions.
Right.
Because it's not fair to simply send somebody home and then let them become let them become very, very anxious.
In terms of the solutions itself, N. Chandra, the chairman of Tata Group, wrote a very interesting piece about how more technology will invariably lead to more jobs. So, we just need to skill people right. Do companies have the patience to do that today, or are they letting go of people because that's the easiest way to perhaps ensure that margins don't take a major hit?
He's right. Just look at the case of ATMs. When ATMs came, a lot of people thought that tellers would lose their job. Actually, the number of tellers has actually increased. So therefore, we must accept that as new technologies come, there will be more and more job opportunities as long as we help our youngsters to reskill themselves for the required jobs. It just takes a little bit of determination on the part of the senior leaders of the industry to invest heavily in skills. As you know, Infosys has the world's largest corporate training facility. So I have no doubt at all that it should be very easy for companies like Infosys to mount new training programs and reskill a large number of youngsters.
You think the IT industry perhaps should have read this demand, many years back instead of, talking about it, say, in the last year or so?
I think they are all smart people. They are all well-intentioned. They are spending a lot of time in finding solutions. So I would not be critical. All that we need to do is to be very constructive in providing whatever help we can provide to those people in coming out with new ideas, new solutions.
In fact, we got Infosys COO UB Praveen Rao to react on the issue of layoffs today, though he did not specifically talk about what Mr. Murthy said, what his suggestions are as far as layoffs are concerned. Praveen Rao believes that the issue itself has been exaggerated, that companies continue to hire, and the numbers too have been exaggerated. Listen into what he had to say.
I think all the news about job losses and all are really overstated. In Infosys itself, last year we recruited more than 20,000 people. This year again we are likely to recruit similar numbers. In fact, in the first half itself, Q1, Q2, we will be recruiting more than 10,000 people. And with respect to all the talk about layoffs and all, it's a regular performance-based things that we do every year, and the numbers are really 300, 400, which is consistent with what we have seen every year. So we are actually creating more jobs, we are adding more people than and letting go only a minuscule of people, and purely from a performance-related perspective.
So clearly Infosys reacting to that interview but not taking a clear stand on the solutions. But we also got the government's policy think tank Niti Aayog to react to this interview, because remember, for the longest time IT has been the biggest private sector employer in India, generating lakhs of jobs, millions of jobs, in fact 3.9 million jobs currently, and millions more of indirect jobs as well. It contributes a significant percentage to our exports and GDP. So what really happens when the engine of India's job creation starts sputtering, and is there reason to worry? And will Mr. Murthy's solutions really work to protect jobs and also create them? Listen to what Niti Aayog CEO Arvind Panagaria had to say.
Ultimately, here the decision has to be of the companies themselves. What Mr. Murthy is doing is, as a senior veteran of the industry, some moral suasion. That look, instead of cutting jobs, cut maybe the salaries a bit, and that's a possible solution. But it is ultimately something that the industry has to decide upon on its own.
But how big a worry or a concern is the current situation in the IT sector, the IT layoffs that we are seeing, and do you believe that situation will ease going forward, and what kind of steps should the companies really take?
Look, one of the things we need to also come to grips with is, in aggregate, how the IT jobs are doing, and at least going by an article that appeared just 2 or 3 days ago by Mr. Saurabh Srivastav, who heads the NESCOM. In aggregate, jobs in IT actually have been rising. He mentioned some 600,000 or 6 lakh additional jobs in, I think, the last 3 years, but you need to check his article. Now, of course, jobs for us, not just in any specific sector, but as a national policy makers, our concern is with the jobs in the economy as a whole. Every sector is important, and we need to also bring up new sectors which can create much more jobs.
You heard out Niti Aayog there, the government's policy think tank, really reacting to this big interview. But to take this forward to find out, if Murthy's job-saving formula will work, if it's something that companies will look at adopting, we have a former Infosian herself, Infy's former global HR head, Nandita Gurjar, joining us on this special show from Bengaluru. Nandita, thank you so much for taking our time. This is the first time that Narayan Murthy has really spoken out on the contentious issue of layoff, and he's given a two-pronged approach to saving jobs. One, of course, is that senior people making some adjustments. He's referred to the adjustments that the Infosys management made after the internet bust in 2000-2001, and he's also spoken about spending more, giving more time to train youngsters. What is your own take about this formula? Do you think it will work? Is it a pragmatic solution?
So I think, first and foremost, I think we are being speculative still, because no IT organization has really come out with any numbers saying that, a certain number of people are going to be laid off, right? Right now what is happening, we still don't have those numbers, but what is happening is because of performance appraisal, which is something which they have been doing for all these years. But if layoffs do happen, because the business model has changed, there is a cost pressure, people are moving to digital, to cloud computing, all the skills which are new, then I agree to what Mr. Murthy said, that the first thing that an organization needs to do is really to look at saying, how can we protect our workforce. And this is not for performance, I want to, I keep stressing on that, because, keep those separate. But if you're really looking at layoffs, then I think first and foremost you should ask the question, do I really need to do it? And why am I doing it? So if it is for cost, then of course there is a very clear way of managing that cost. No pay hikes, cut down variable pay and bonuses of people, and ensure that you can protect jobs for a longer period of time. Having said that, this is not a long-term sustainable thing, because if in case that the layoffs are something which is there in the future, then skilling and reskilling the employees is a very big part, which I'm sure every IT company will do. As I said, the core skill really, or the core business model of IT companies has to be to skill their employees. So I'm sure they will do that. But if you still find that there are people who cannot be skilled, or it is just not for them to get skilled, then I think you need to let those people go. Because while it seems as if the right thing to do is to keep people who do not have a job on your rolls, it's lose-lose for both the company as well as for the employee. It's really impossible for anyone, especially a knowledge worker, to be there for 8 to 10 hours doing nothing, nothing valuable with his time. So then they become cynical, and then they become bitter, and it's so unfair on the employee. So I think then you need to come to terms with the fact that you don't have a job in this company, and you need to make sure that he is asked to go, and he then finds opportunities outside.
Right. But Nandita, do you think companies will be receptive to these solutions in the current environment? Because business is not looking too good. They're also under pressure to preserve margins. They're also answerable to investors. Especially listed companies, have to go through this quarter se quarter tak cycle. So do you think they will be receptive to these solutions?
You don't become an employer of choice when good things are happening. You become an employer of choice when bad things are happening, and how good companies react to those bad things. You can't treat people, saying that I don't need you anymore and just let you go without giving them a chance. So it's very, very critical that you have given them a very good chance to reskill and to get re-employed in your organization first, and then make sure that they are outplaced into other organizations in case you just have to let them go.
But isn't this reflective of a larger problem, management compensation, versus saving employees? I mean, this is something that we have seen in the West at the height of, the subprime crisis, the banking crisis, where bankers faced a lot of flack for drawing million-dollar salaries when people in the junior rung, others really paid the price. So are we, running the risk of something similar happening as far as the IT industry is concerned? Million-dollar salaries and pay hikes happening in a difficult year. I mean, I agree pay cut may not be a viable solution in the long term, but are these companies really sending out the right message by taking bonuses, by taking good pay hikes for senior management at a time when hikes are getting deferred for other employees? So don't you think companies, the industry, they need to introspect as far as these things are concerned?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, my view is very clear on this, that if you're going through a bad time, then everybody goes through a bad time, right? Because you have to deal with it holistically, rather than say that some people continue to have a good time and some people, will face the consequences of, a bad time. So I think the organization has to relook at, the pay hikes for some people, high bonuses for some people, and make sure that it's cross actually, right? If you say that on one side of the company, people continue to enjoy a different kind of a lifestyle, and on some people are fearful of losing their basic jobs.
The first part of your answer, you also said it will not be possible to save all jobs. Now, what happens to employees who are not able to cope, who perhaps don't have an aptitude for some of these new technologies? Because we're not just talking about, reskilling, retraining youngsters who are coming into the workforce, but we're also talking about people in their 30s who've gotten used to a way of, doing IT functions, say, for the last decade or so. So what if, they're not able to adapt, they're not able to learn some of these new skills?
The belief that once you get out of IT, that you can't find another job, I think is not right. I believe that these people can find jobs elsewhere, and from tier 1 to second rung, or maybe become entrepreneurs themselves. These are very, very skilled people. However, their skilling is restricted to a particular technology, which probably is the one which is getting obsolete. So it doesn't mean that this is a bad person, it just means that he's in the wrong place.
But are companies investing enough to train people in these new technologies? I mean, Mr. Murthy said that, all these companies have built up training infrastructure over the years, that it shouldn't be too difficult for them to mount new programs on top of the existing infrastructure. So are they doing enough in that respect, and also giving employees enough time to reskill themselves?
I'm sure they are. I mean, look, it takes a lot to hire an employee and to make him skilled in the current job, right? So the employees, the organizations are not likely to just ask them to go, What do they do? I mean, where are they going to get these new skilled people from? I mean, that's really the question which people should ask. In saying, by letting go the current employees, where are you believing the new skilled people are going to come from? They have to come from the IT industry itself. So reskilling them is the smartest thing to do.
Narayana, you know, the reason why people are so obsessed with IT is because it's also been a huge job engine for India. I mean, it's been the biggest private sector employer, and it's largely been synonymous with urban consumption, with, you know, urban spend. Should we be prepared for a different future? Perhaps, you know, it will not be an industry that hires in such huge numbers. So then what happens to not just the current workforce, but also these lakhs of graduates who are coming out of engineering colleges every year? Is the social cost going to be really high because of this?
You know, technology in the past, and I believe in the future, will always create more jobs. So I don't believe that this is the end of the road for IT. I just believe that they have reached a snag which, you know, they have to deal with. There are some changes which they need to make in their business model. They need to reskill their employees on a very large scale. They already have a training engine to do that. So I think much ado is being made out of this. They are perfectly capable of handling this. And I think this whole thing in media is just creating unnecessary panic, which I believe should stop.
Finally, Nandita, one other thing that, you know, Mr. Murthy said is that this is comparable to previous cycles. You know, he spoke about the 2008 crisis, the crisis that the industry underwent after the dot-com bust. But, you know, is it really comparable to those cycles? Because in the last decade, you've had IT sort of depend on one industry or the other to keep the growth engine going. You know, engineering services, remote infrastructure management, BPO. But now with these new technologies, you really don't know what to prepare for. So is it really comparable to the previous cycles? Because technology seems to be invading just about everything that we are familiar with. So would you agree that it's comparable, or, you know, should we be prepared for perhaps an unknown as far as the situation is concerned?
I think it is, because at that point of time, I remember we went through the same kind of turmoil in terms of, you know, what do we do now and, you know, what the future will look like, right? But the companies always came out of it. So I am very, very confident that they will. It won't take, you know, much time. They just need to make sure that, you know, they have their act together and go ahead.
Thanks so much, Nandita, for giving us your time and perspective on this issue. That then brings us to the end of the special coverage of this big exclusive this week, our interview with Infosys founder Narayana Murthy. As usual, when he talks, the nation listens, and he's got everyone thinking about whether this is the best approach to layoffs or we need to take a more humane approach to how we deal with employees. Thanks so much for watching.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/ETNow.